Alrighty, I'm meteorologist Bill Martin. I'm here to talk a little bit about valley fog and why it's been so bad this year. We had a lot of rain earlier in the season, over 100% of rainfall average. The valley, the ground, the Bay Area valleys, the Bay coastal valleys, wet at the surface. Nights are getting longer, days are getting shorter as we head towards the winter solstice, and we are into this classic November, December, and beyond valley fog events. Now, the thing we've been hearing a lot, and I've been hearing a lot, and I've been thinking about a lot, we're seeing this run of valley fog as prolific a run as I can remember in 15, 20 years. Now, again, it's my memory. It's a hard thing to really track valley fog, the extent, the record longest fog. 14 days is pretty long, and we're coming up. We've had a lot of days of fog, over a week, week and a half, almost 2 weeks in some places. And the valley fog it's dangerous, right? It's not good for crops, some crops. It's good for other crops. It's really bad for driving. It's really bad for airports, right? It's just really an inconvenience for many. So I thought we'd delve into it a little bit. This is a shot of valley fog, and as its name implies, it forms in valleys because the ground's wet because all the rain we got. The days are getting shorter, gets cooler overnight. The ground cools rapidly. The ground, as it cools, the ground cools more quickly than the air, and then what happens is the air cools to the temperature of the ground, and when the air cools, the air is what's carrying the water vapor. When the air cools to its dew point temperature, you get fog. And so that's why, I grew up in the Central Valley, paradise, but we were down in Chico all the time, and we have stories. I got stories. You knew I would. But one of my, when my first time I really remember being bad, it was always bad, driving up the Skyway from Paradise in the winter, coming home late from probably a party or something stupid, and literally you're driving up out of the valley, and at some point the fog gets really dense because you get to that point where the inversion is, right? So the fog's right down. So as you're moving, I'm coming out of it. By the time I get to Paradise, the fog's gone. You're up over 2,000 feet. But when you go through that layer, so I remember literally, Skyway is the speed limit's like 55. It may be 65 now. But I remember having to open the door of my Buick Special, 67 brown, dirt brown Buick Special. It was awesome. The thing ran great, 250 engine. But I had to open my door and look out. And I remember specifically, I kid you not, watching the white line. That's how I drove. Because we only had maybe half mile to go like that before we came out of the fog. But think about that for a minute. First of all, I should be dead. Secondly, that happened to a lot of us. Thirdly, my buddy Eric Holt was driving. This was down in Chico off River Road. He's driving back from somewhere late, because this Tule fog is worse late at night, early in the mornings when the temperatures are cool. He's driving with his head out the window, doing the same kind of thing, right? He was driving with his head out the window. He was on the wrong side of the road because he was following the other opposite line. But he was doing the same thing I was doing because that's what we used to do. And was going probably 30 miles an hour and literally missed the mailbox, missed his head by a few inches. So, these are just anecdotal stories, but that's two people, and I know both of them, right? So it happens. It's nasty stuff, and there are a lot of horrible accidents that are caused by that. So we'll talk about that. So growing up in the Central Valley, whiteout conditions, told the stories. Now let's look at the way it looked. This is how how it looked this morning, and you can see the fog footprint. And it's looked like this every morning for a while. So that's about 400 miles of significant fog from Redding to Bakersfield. And in this zone, right in this Central Valley, the giant bathtub, if you will, temperatures aren't getting out of the upper 40s, low 50s, and they haven't for a while. And they had a run a few weeks ago. We were doing 60s, 68 degrees, 69 in Redding. But this giant bathtub, which we call the Central Valley, is a giant bathtub. And all that cold air comes like here. It sinks from the Sierra Nevada, right? It sinks off the hills. Cold air sinks here. East side of the coastal range, south side of the Trinity Alps. All this cold air bleeds down into the valley, just settles down. Now, of course, you got the Central Valley with the Sacramento River, Yuba River, American River. You've got all this moisture available to this Tule fog. So when I say California is, I don't know if it's the most prolific valley fog production area size-wise in terms of, I don't know. I never really looked into it, but I would, in my mind, guess it's one of the more prolific valley fog formations. So it's been a very, very foggy year so far. And we have more to come. There are no big changes in the weather right away. That's why I thought I'd talk about this as well. And as we look at how this stuff forms, it starts with the rain, right? So you get the rain going, the valley fog isn't there yet because the inversion's not there, right? Valley fog, I probably should mention this before, but valley fog requires a stable environment, right? High pressure. And if you look back at this guy, that's a high pressure zone, right? It's the same as the coastal fog. When we look at the coastal fog in the summer, that's a fair weather pattern. This is a fair weather pattern. When I see that, I go, there's nothing going on. Now that first weather system that comes through is going to blow that fog out. The inversion is going to lift, the fog is going to vertically mix out. But in the meantime, before that weather system gets here, this is what it would look like when it got here. Is the rain rains. Would be the Central Valley, poorly done by me. And then you get moisture at the surface, a wet ground. And this cool air from the mountains has a tendency to want to drop down. And so the whole valley is set up this way. It's a giant V or a giant funnel. And so we've got cool air sinking, wet ground, temperatures in the 40s, and through conduction, which is what we talked about before, where the air bumps into the cooler ground, and through conduction, the air cools, and it cools and condenses, and you get fog in a stable environment, right? So there's your stable environment. So all this fog down here is stable too. When you get cold air sinks. So that's why we call it stable, right? If this was warm air under here, it would rise up, or relatively warm air would rise up and blow up that inversion. So an inversion generally is cold air over or under warm air, and that's what you get. So that's how the valley fog forms. And above the inversion line, up on the top of Mount Tam, Mount Diablo, Hamilton, temperatures have been in the 60s, even a little warmer than that last week. But below 1,800 feet or 2,000 feet, it's been very cold. So a lot of folks on the foothills, Grass Valley, and those areas have had significant kind of schizophrenia because they're right on the fog line, right on the fog sun line. It just depends. And then what happens is the high pressure is doing what it's been doing, is sticking around. And so when the high pressure sticks around, you get this continued inversion where the air sinks. And what we're seeing around here now is the fog getting pushed against. There's so much of it in the Central Valley that it's getting shoved up over the east side of the coastal hills and coming down into Hayward, out into San Francisco, right? I mean, I was watching that stuff come out through the Golden Gate Bridge. I was out surfing with my son a couple of days ago, and just like the Plato Fun Factory, right? The Golden Gate Bridge, low-lying. The fog's not supposed to, well, it does go that way, but you're not used to it going that way. Fog's going out through the gate, and the winds were howling. I mentioned it the other day on one of my weathercasts. The wind is sort of a Venturi component because of how the bridge sets up, but it was howling winds offshore. There's all this cool air trying to rush out. The ocean's warmer, right? So it's a thermal low, and you get that offshore gradient. I know, it's kind of fascinating. So we are a fog producing area, and it's been one of the worst years I can remember. It's hard to quantify it. 400 miles long though, and it's a giant bathtub. And you notice LA is kind of out of it. LA is getting some fog, a little bits here and there, but not like this. This is day after day of buildup, and it does build. Now there will be some changes. You can even see some notching occurring here, and there are some changes coming, which will be nice. So as we move forward here, let's see. I got some more stuff for you here. We've got this shot: valley fog, radiation fog, Tule fog. So now you know what it is. It's all the same thing. Tule fog, because it forms when the Tule's low-lying. Radiation fog, because that's that conduction thing I was talking about. The Earth radiates the heat away, and it gets really cold, right? You ever notice how your car, when you touch your car and at night or in the morning, how cold it is? Colder than the grass or a tree or the doorknob. It's because it's releasing heat all night, and so it gets colder than the actual air. And in this case, That's what we're looking at. That's why they call it radiation fog. You're radiating out the heat. And then valley fog. I like radiation fog because it reminds me sort of how it's formed. And let's see, I got some more stuff for you here. I built some special graphics. Oh, so this is one of the drags about the valley fog, are the car crashes, and you know all about it. Central Valley, 99, 505, and it's bad. Especially 99 tends to be the worst down the east side of the California, the Central Valley. And there have been big wrecks. I wrote some of them down, actually. Pile up, February 5th, 2002. I remember this one. There was a 90-car pileup. And it was in, I think I got some pictures of it here. 90-car pileup. And it was in Fresno. No, it wasn't in Fresno. It was, let's try to get it better up there for you. February, Highway 99, 7:14 a.m. Didn't give me the location. Didn't really give me the location. Looks something like this, though. And I just think about that. And that's the story I told you where you're looking out the window and you're looking at the streets. That's how that stuff starts, right? And people are on their way to work in the morning. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is, especially growing up in the valley, people get comfortable in the fog. And valley fog's a funny thing. I've actually seen this, and I'll bet you have too, where the fog forms. I'll show you if I can get a little graphic going here. But right in here, right when it first starts to form, because it's cooling by conduction, the fog is right down on the deck. I've been in fog, valley fog, especially going over like a low-lying bridge with a water source, where the fog is just to about your nose as you drive through it. You're right there. It doesn't last very long because it's happening so quickly, but it forms on the ground first and it works its way up, right? So it comes down from down to up. So the visibilities are horrible, especially late nights and early mornings. So the car crashes, a big problem. And this car crash was, again, one of the biggest ones. There was a car crash earlier that year, and it was in Kern County. It was the same year, I think. No, it was Kern County, 77 cars. So you try to imagine what that looks like. And just terrifying. And then we talked about issues with travel. I always talk about the maritime stuff. Do you guys remember this? The Cosco Busan, November 7th. Wow. 53,000 gallons of oil came out of this thing. It hit the Bay Bridge. It hit the Delta Tower at the Bay Bridge, scraped along it, and blew out 53,000 gallons of oil. 7,000 plus seabirds and wildlife were destroyed, which is just terrible. And, when you get out on the bay, I mention this all the time, you get this situation where the fog's, right, it's tempted, it's a bathtub, but then it starts to push out, right? And when it pushes out, it can be, it's almost more dangerous, and I'll get to the deadliest shipping accident in the history of San Francisco in a minute, because that's exactly was the case, the Rio de Janeiro. The fog comes out. There might be a little coastal fog out here, but you can see it even here today, pinching out here. The visibility becomes almost zero. And in maritime, travelers, people using the ferries, fishermen, whatever, it's hard to find the gate. I know you've got geopositioning, equipment that you can find yourself, but it's still very dangerous. You're flying on instruments basically in the bay, because same with the ferries, the high-speed ferries. So they have to slow down and change their routes. But the Rio de Janeiro was coming in, and the fog had come out just like it is here, and it missed the Golden Gate Bridge and hit kind of just behind the Presidio. And it is a big, big ship. They had, how many people was it? It was one of the deadliest. Missed the gate. One of the deadliest maritime accidents in the history of San Francisco, and it was 118 to 128 people dead. They're not real sure how many people perished. So you get the idea. So it's really dangerous stuff. And in my mind, the valley fog, because of the traffic, because of the cars, because of the maritime thing because of the airports. We didn't even really talk about SFO having flight delays this whole week, Sacramento having flight delays. It's a little easier on airports, I suspect, because they do have really sophisticated sensing radar and sensing equipment. But still, I'm sure the pilots don't like landing in that stuff. And then we've got the farm industry, which actually the valley fog, Tule fog, radiation fog actually does some good things for that. It actually is helpful in a lot of cases. Like I think I wrote some of these down. This is so good. The plus side are the grapes, citrus, almonds, pistachios, and stone fruit. They like the valley fog, and the main reason, really, right off the bat, for like grapes and stuff like that, is when you have valley fog, you don't get fog, or you don't get heavy freeze. You don't even really get frost. When you have valley fog, that temperature, when the water vapor turns and condenses, it's actually a warming function. So when latent evaporation is cooling, right? When you blow on your evaporation is cooling, condensation is a warming process, so it releases some latent heat. So temperatures stay above freezing. That's why farmers use the dew point. The dew point temperature is that temperature with which air will cool and condense. And when it cools and condenses, it's warming. So it's actually going the other way. So a lot of the citrus crops, stone fruits appreciate. They also like the soil moisture that comes with it, with the valley fog, right? Which makes sense. It's hard to dry. Like I was out riding my bike tonight, and it was kind of nice because I was looking at it. It was like the grounds. We haven't had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks, but I'm not stressing on fire at all because this fog has really just kind of moistened everything up. So it helps soil moisture. It reduces evapotranspiration. Not really good for some berries because it promotes mold. I was surprised it doesn't mess with the grapes, but I didn't see that. And then the tomatoes, they get a little bit of a fungus growing. And then I took this yesterday. This was a shot that I like because it shows you the fog. This is Sibley, and this is looking towards the right. This is going out towards the ocean or towards the bay, and this is fog getting pushed up over the hill and pushing down. Right, so there's so much fog in the Central Valley. If you know Sibley, there's so much fog in the Central Valley that it just came spilling out over, and it's been doing that. And it wants to, right? The environment's high pressure, so it wants to sink. It's also cooler, so it wants to sink as well. So we've had a lot of really interesting fog looks, and then this was actually this evening. It's off a little bit, but you can see Mount Diablo. The fog actually cleared for a little bit today. But the fog's coming right back. You can see about where the inversion is, and then this is Mount Diablo off in the distance. You do see a little junk in the air because the air quality not that good with this pattern at all. In other words, the air quality in Southern California, because of the high pressure, they've had air quality alerts, spare the air days, no wood burning and such. So the valley fog, you guys, it's a thing. It's something that's not going away. It's something that's been around forever, but it's not as pronounced as it was in the 80s or the 60s or the 70s. And that's because the atmosphere has gotten cleaner. Valley fog likes to have particulate to grab onto. And this I did not know. But and this makes some sense because I've been hearing from a lot of weather watchers and people I've known over the years saying same thing we've been talking about. It's like, I can't remember a run like this. Well, the valley fog, when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, did seem a lot more prolific. It really did. And that was because you had smudge pots in the Central Valley. It's because you had leaded gasoline, so just leaving stuff in the air for this water vapor to grab onto. And so the fog was actually worse in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s than it is now. And that makes sense because, again, a lot of people I've been talking to, we've been talking about it. And it's like, yeah, this has been kind of, this valley fog isn't as, like what we've seen the last few weeks is exactly what I remember back in the day. But I haven't seen this in 20 years where we just have day after day after fog. So I hope that sheds some light on it. It's good. It's bad. It's California. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, also I do weather every day. I try to do it every day. So if you can subscribe throw me a like. But it's updated rather every day. We use the models, and you get a chance to kind of see how the sausage is made because I do a bunch of I think it's interesting stuff. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you had have a good day, and I'll see you back here soon with some weather.